we're live again today on Imagine Fitting In podcast with Elliot Blake. Elliot, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Right. What do we say? Your people met my people. And we arranged this time spent. And so can you hear me okay? Okay. And we arranged this time spent. And your career then is I hear just major storytelling, and that fascinates me. And in this day and age, we know it's all about the story. But I love to first start and just kind of give a little background, like where were you born, where you grew up, and kind of what kind of got you here with family life and brought you this way.
Right. Well, I was born in New Jersey, but moved around a little bit when I was a kid. My first 3 years was in New Jersey, North Jersey, and then we moved to outside of Atlanta for a couple of years, and then to the Baltimore area. And that's where I grew up, and I remain a diehard Baltimore Orioles fan for longer than I care to admit now. Let's see, I went to my first Orioles game in 1976, and I think people could probably do the math and figure out that was 50 years ago. So I grew up there, and that's that is where I sort of, I don't know, started spreading my wings in storytelling. But yeah, I mean, my parents were really encouraging. I had an uncle passed away 2007, who was also very encouraging and kind of helped inspire my love of stories and storytelling and honestly being silly. Just having a sense of humor. I mean, all these things I think are really important to being able to be a good storyteller. It's like, I think you have to be able to poke a little bit of fun at yourself and be able to, and I think which is a good life skill also. Just being able to, you got to be able to take a joke, and you got to be able to kind of, deflate a situation perhaps by poking a little fun at yourself. I think it's a little self-deprecation never hurt anybody, but it's one of those things that I just kind of learned over the years. As I was growing up. I think that was my way of fitting in with my friend group and just, I don't know, forging my way. It was a sense of humor. Yeah.
Absolutely. With that, that self-deprecation, it reminds me when I'm reading about stand-up comedy, and, you have to obviously be able to laugh at yourself, make fun of yourself, make yourself vulnerable, like as you share what you know and believe. And I think it's important that, that people feel that. And I think people get uncomfortable with being vulnerable. What do you think?
I think so. I've found that, look, I have this policy, like when on anything that I'm doing, is just to be honest with the people that I'm working with. And with that comes some vulnerability. But I think the benefit of that is that the people that you're working with come to trust you very quickly, because you're being honest and truthful, and they know it. And and there's no shame, I think, in being vulnerable and opening yourself up. And I actually think I think it's better for your mental health to let some things out. I do understand being cautious about who you're sharing with, and thinking carefully about how you want to share things. But I don't think it. I think most people are also going through something, or have or just have a feeling about something. And I think the more that you can share with people around you, the better it is for you, and the better it is for them.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like any given time, right? We always have the next thing, right? We're facing something, a challenge, or we're doubting ourselves. We're facing it. We're trying to figure out a potential avenue, or we are avoiding, And I think it says a lot to the human condition in these times now that I'm of an age and you're of an age before understanding when we grew up that these were all obviously all very powerful, resonating truths. But now the dynamic and the intensity of it seems like through all this ability, like, that we're talking from every side of the country, the technology and this ability to communicate too much, but not actually that, right? We lose that in person, and that in person vibe is truly so important. We know that. And it's interesting because, when we go to the movies and then, we'll get into all your work and you've done some amazing stuff, is that, you get immersed in some other world and you're all of a sudden like, okay, I'm just going to sit back and see what this person does or see how that goes. And all of a sudden, when you walk out, I've never really walked out of a movie, not been inspired or had a new idea to kind of roll with in my own life. So I commend you on that level of writing and storytelling. And it's fun. I have to share this, Blake, Elliot. Um, I've been practicing the arts. As you see, my background and my logos these are all stuff I've created. I'm a graphic designer and all this from ways back, and painter and all kinds of arts and writing. So I kind of finally realized that, I'm in the same kind of group with you. And I never realized how much powerful I was actually a writer, but I was using all these other mediums. And through through my long career, 30 plus year career in the fitness industry, I've had these incredible amounts of conversations and open and vulnerable to like my own essence of my physical being and whatever. And it makes people comfortable. Like you said, right? You got to show this kind of vulnerability and openness. And then they get relaxed and they're not so guarded to like, who is this person? And do they care? And if I don't care how you think of me in any state when I share with you, then I'm sure you're going to start to pull your guard down and go, okay, this guy's real. And I like to call this podcast my conversation canvas. So, every day, every episode, I just completely enjoy exchanging ideas and going back and forth with guys like you. And as again, I will say, I'm a fellow writer now, and I've been songwriting, and it's just amazing. And music's always been my game, but I've never been in that avenue of confidence enough to do it. So now I have the vehicles and the resources to make that happen. So I just released my first album by Imagine. I go by Imagine the Artist. And it has been the most fulfilling thing. And I'm kind of reliving my teenage dreams.
I think that's fantastic. Yeah,
right?
That's great.
It's just it's a wonderful discovery. So thank you very much. But like, Elliot, like every creative journey like begins with curiosity. I mean, looking back, what sparked your imagination? You mentioned your uncle. Did that mean you believe like you could become your life's work? Like, when did that light bulb go off?
That didn't really occur to me that I could, excuse me, that I could do that for a living until I probably the mid '80s. So I was a teenager, and but actually maybe a little bit earlier. So as I say, I grew up in Baltimore, and the film director Barry Levinson was Baltimore. And so, Diner and Tin Men, these are, excuse me, these are his movies. And I remember when they were shooting Diner in Baltimore, and what a big deal that was to have these movie stars come in and to have a movie shot. And they shot some of it, like, I don't know, a couple miles from where I lived. And the for any diner fans out there, there's a scene where they're riding horses on a farm, and that was just down the road from where I grew up, and in the suburban Baltimore area. And so, so that was kind of, I think, right, maybe the first inkling where where there were that people did this for a living, and that made movies and that kind of stuff for a living. And I had loved movies from an early age because my dad was a big movie fan and watched movies all the time. And my uncle was also a movie fan, and whenever we went and visited him, he had all movie books and stuff around his house, and I loved just looking through those, and he had a Humphrey Bogart book and a Marx Brothers book,
Great.
and those two things were hugely influential to me. Just looking through them, and the Marx Brothers book had dialogue excerpts from the movies, and I knew those movies because I'd watched them with him and with my dad, um, and I loved them, and so that was kind of a gateway, I think, for me to start just kind of telling my own stories. But then, of course, Star Wars happened, and
Game
when I was
changer.
7. Yeah, and my dad took me to see it, and after that, that was it. I mean, I already knew about Star Trek, and I loved, the original series, and I had already loved science fiction, but there was something about Star Wars, and this is true for many people, my age, and a lot of people that I know in the entertainment business. I mean, pretty much everybody I went to college with, and was in film school with. They were doing it because of Star Wars, in some way, shape, or form. And not that we all wanted to make Star Wars. Although I do have some friends who have worked on Star Wars franchise, and it fulfilled lifelong dreams doing it, which is amazing.
Right.
But it was more just about that, being inspired, seeing something and thinking, oh, I have a story that I can tell. And you start, emulating those stories that you see, and then eventually, over time, if it's something that you really develop a passion for, you start figuring out how to tell your own stories. But it starts with, like, for me, it started with that, and playing with my Star Wars guys and making scenarios, and crashing spaceships, and like silly stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then having I had a really great teacher in third grade, Mrs. Hugelmeyer, who's, of course, you can't ever forget a name like Hugelmeyer, and she had us write stories and make our own books, and
Sweet.
yeah, which was great. And so I wrote my first story I ever wrote, I guess, like, real story I wrote was something called and illustrated. At 8 you can be an illustrator and not and not have great expectations. And so, but it was a little book called The Big Mac Attack, and Big Macs from space came down and attacked people, and
I
so
love Big Macs.
so do I. I don't eat them that often, I'll be
I
honest,
don't, I
but
don't, I don't anymore, but I used to love them.
yeah,
That's so
oh,
funny.
yeah,
What,
yeah.
what
So
imagination. What
yeah,
I can,
and it was encouraged. Like, my parents really encouraged it. So
right, right. I mean, that open form, free thinking, and the free will to just explore. And I mean, for everybody, right? What a mind blowing time that was, and moment when we realized that Darth Vader's his father, and it's like it's such a metaphor for, okay, you have to go out away from me. And in your psyche, that, he's his psyche, right? In his psyche, his male psyche is within him, and he's off to go to discover his own adventure. And he can't, right? It's like the old thing, right? That, I always mention this in some of my podcasts, Elliot, that obviously there's no stronger bond in the universe ever exist than a mother and her child. But then that bond of the father and the son, there is in that dynamic of the parents that, you the young women have their menstruation. They have this physical moment where all of a sudden you're an adult, you're a woman now, and now you've broken free, and now you have to take care, right, of yourself. But on like a psychological, mental side of it for the boys, they don't have any physical thing that just kind of happens besides just getting all anxious and like having all this energy and boundless, like, okay, where am I looking? What can I do? And the fact that your uncle and your father and that openness of like inspiring you, obviously very strong mentors, and your teacher is fantastic. And I think that, there's a lot to be said about some paper and crayons with those 8-year-olds, and put those tablets aside, and the free form engagement to be able to talk to your guide, your person next to you, and share this ongoing process. And I'm sure where you're at there, I mean, you've worked across television, film, animation, what else, podcast, comics, what audio dramas, like what medium haven't you taught? But what do you think what has each medium kind of taught you, telling stories and to connecting people?
I think there's the universal theme of it, I think, has just been, and this is something also that took me a long time to learn. I think, I mean, over, like many years of a career, is that, is that the stories that resonate are the stories where you actually have something to say. And that was, I think, the big takeaway, and that's universal, I think, across whatever medium you're working in, and is that you kind of, not that they aren't entertainments, or like that's what I always set out to do, is like to try and tell an entertaining story, but and I want to find something to say, thematically, about, that, so that it's not necessarily something that's hitting you on the head, but that it is, but that that the stories are undergirded by an idea. And I think it took me a long time to really, figure out what it was I wanted to be saying in my stories. And I've been very lucky, especially over the last decade, to move from being just a guy on a crew, helping to make something, maybe 15 years, but whatever the case may be, it's like to move from being a crew member who's, just to being somebody in the lead, and that, which is where I always wanted to be. And but even then, I was primarily helping other people tell their stories, and helping them figure out what their stories, what stories they wanted to tell. And then, like, as a producer, I always felt like my job, regardless whether it was a cartoon or an audio drama, it was to help facilitate that creative process, and to kind of create an environment where people could do their best work. And then was able finally to get to a place where I had the opportunity to kind of turn that on myself, and tell a story that I really wanted to tell. And I did
Yeah.
want to tell these other stories
Yeah.
also. But to find one that was personal, I think maybe more personal to me, and that I was in the driver's seat.
Right. So you know what? Two thoughts stand out to me is, number one, obviously you put the legwork in, you put the time, and you had that destiny in your mind. You didn't give up. And when you said about entertain, it's really funny. I was sitting here listening to you talk. And if you think about the word entertain, I almost want to say, this is this thought that came to me just now. If you can engage and keep that person in the moment, that's entertainment, because you are there. You're not stepping away in your mind, right? You're there having it unfold. And I think that, again, I'm familiar with, I've met quite a few people. I've had clients that, were like, I had a friend that was a production accountant on some major movies. And, it's the energy and communication. And I just had this conversation with some friends last night, like in the music business or any endeavor, right? What's the two most important things that you're going to be able to pull off to be able to, right, do the kind of things that we envision at a grander scale? And that's communicate and collaborate. And
Yes.
if you can't do that and people don't enjoy your presence in the process of doing that, then it's a problem. And you could,
Yeah.
right? Everybody can have that grand intention of wanting to, like, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to collaborate, whatever. We're going to do this big project. But if you're not quite willing to be vulnerable and like allow it to flow, and it's interesting because I could see how it could be almost a power trip where, like, once you get that juice, like, as a producer, dude, and a writer, I mean, all of a sudden, right? Like you just mentioned, you come from watching it, supporting it, leading. And that's amazing, dude. So I applaud your efforts. It's congratulations. It's well deserved, obviously.
Thank you.
And,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, well, I was going to say, I mean, part of that is, kind of getting into that leadership position is, I mean, for me, like on my, particular journey, it was just kind of when I finally got that opportunity, I really drew from the people, from the leaders that I had worked for previously, and kind of took those lessons forward. But you also, like, you talk about collaboration, and like the biggest thing that I learned in animation is that, animation takes a lot of people to make a TV show or a movie. And it is an incredible, even though you have leaders, you have creative leaders, you have a director, you have the producer, you have the writer, and you're kind of working towards the vision of those people, is that there's still room for ideas, and that it's and for collaboration, because there's so many people that touch that work. It starts out as an idea, and then it gets written into as a script. And if you're the writer, you have a certain idea maybe of how it's going to look or sound. And then you start introducing these other people into the process. So you introduce a director into the process, and in animation, they're the person responsible for visualizing and bringing those words to life in both art and in the directing the actors. And so the director starts to bring their creative energy to the process, and what you may have had in your mind as a writer starts to change, and often for the better, because the director comes up with a way to present a scene that you didn't think of, and it's better than you imagined. And then the storyboard artist comes into the process, and that story artist, in talking with the director, comes up with another idea, and all these ideas build on each other. And then the actor comes in, and they say it. You may have had a very specific way in your mind of how a line is delivered, but then that actor comes in, and they have different ideas, and they're bringing their own thing to it, and they say the line in a way that is not the way you imagined it, but is better than the way you imagined it. and so it's this hugely collaborative process. And I think you can power trip, when you're at the top of the pyramid, but if you do that, you're cutting yourself off from all of these other ideas.
Right.
And that is the thing that's the thing you don't want. And, the shows that I've worked on, one of the things that I learned from the directors that I worked with was, you don't know where a great idea is going to come from. And so you want to be open to hearing those ideas, but you also have to, understand how, whether an idea is right. Not every idea is going to be the right one for that story. It needs to serve the story, and you have to exercise some. I mean, you're the director. You have to exercise some direction. Some creative control. But you just don't know, and so you want to be open to those. You want to be open to those ideas, and so so collaboration, especially in the arts, I think is everything. And I just saw The Odyssey this week, Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, and I thought it was incredible. And that is the work of, it's one director who is, I think one of the great movie directors of our time, and certainly like of our generation, because he's around, he's in his mid 50s also, uh, and I, but it's the collaboration that makes it work. It's between him and his actors and his cinematographer and every craftsman that comes along and that works on that works on those movies. And on a movie like The Odyssey, it's like it was all, for the most part, handmade, and and he knows that it, because I've heard him talk about this. It's that it's all these pieces coming together,
When
and
you
that's the
say
thing.
when you say handmade, what do you mean by that?
Um, I think, well, a lot of it is, it's there's a lot of practical effects, and so like they're on location, they're on real locations, and they had to figure out how to, like even if they built, even if they built a castle or a palace, on a specific location. Like that was like they built that by hand. They weren't using green screen. They
Oh,
weren't
got it.
adding
Real
like
time.
that kind. They weren't, yeah, like they're just recording it as seen. Not that there aren't special effects in the movie, because there are definitely some places where you have to have them, like the Cyclops. But but for the most part, it's artisans that are at work, and bring in their special, you know, sauce, I guess, to the
Okay.
process, and you want that.
And as a, again, I mean, obviously writer, director, producer, all these different mediums. So I guess you have a book. So what is your book about? And what inspired you to want to write this story specifically?
Well, the book is called Into the Great, kind of like, and that is Into the Great Beyond, but I just shortened it to Into the Great, and it's a science fiction story, and set in a it's sci-fi, so it's set in the future, and humanity has kind of left the solar system. I mean, we still live at, Earth is still home base, but have colonized out a few light years, and and but it's kind of a world that's sort of dominated by kind of a hybrid corporate government, and where profit goes is kind of put ahead of people, and living in space is hard and
And
challenging, and
like reality, like now.
yeah, a little bit, yeah, and so into this world, aliens arrive, and it's the first time intelligent aliens arrive, and they're these kind of godlike, invulnerable, humanoid beings. But the thing is, they don't talk to anybody; they just observe, they just stare, and no one knows what to do, and it throws everybody off. And so, against this backdrop, we've got two people from opposite sides of the law, and they're both kind of stuck in situations that they would like to be out of. They have dreams, they have hopes, and they find a way forward and kind of control of their own destinies with each other. And so that's what it's about, and that's what the story is about. And it was a story that I started years ago. Actually, I wrote it as a comic book first, and then just couldn't find the funding to pay an artist, collaborator to bring it to life. And so I just had it on a back burner, and then I was working. I was doing some consulting, some creative consulting for a video game company, and another consultant, who was there who had run video game studios before. He was consulting, helping to kind of give advice about how to run a studio, and how to kind of set up this business. And we got to talking, and we became friendly, and it turned out he was a writer as well, and very brilliant guy. And after the our consulting gigs were over, with this company, I don't know, within I don't know, about a year later, he sent me a note, and he said, "Hey, I'm starting up this publishing company. And I know you're a creative guy. Let me know if you have anything.
Sweet.
I'm going to publish some short stories, and so my mind went back to Into the Great, and I thought, I should try this because I hadn't written a prose story. I hadn't written prose fiction since I was in college, and everything since had been scripts, for the screen or for the ear, like with audio drama stuff. But
Probably
mostly, yeah, and
it,
it's a very different way of writing.
it probably sounds fun to you, and like stepping back and going, it's almost like it's interesting because what I just get from that is, sometimes we can get moving so forward so fast, and through good times and bad times, and being occupied, right, accordingly. But then also sometimes, kind of forgetting about kind of the essence and baseline of kind of our who we are and what really, got us to where we're at in the first place. So I find that interesting. But, what draws you to science fiction specifically?
Well, I don't know, spaceships, I mean, initially. But and this idea of just kind of going out and exploring and seeing what's out there. I mean, that was and then, but really spaceships when I was a kid, I just thought that was the coolest thing. And, but I always been, even as a kid, I just loved even just the space program, like, like the stuff that NASA did. And just going to the moon and going going into orbit. And I just always suspected, I was like, I always thought, okay, well, we're going to have our, because of movies, like we're going to have our moon base, and then
Yeah,
we're going to
yeah.
go to Mars, and then we're going to have spaceships that can fly at warp speed and all this kind of stuff. But as I got older, so I think probably significantly older, what I realized as an adult was that two things is that science. Well, I guess the biggest thing for me is that science fiction is optimistic. Is even the dystopian science fiction has, I think, has a thread of optimism running through it, because okay, things are bad in the stories, but people are still here. We're still here. We're still fighting the fight. And so to me, I don't know. I always like that. I always feel like even in the dystopic stuff that there's some hope, and I think that's important. And but then
That's
the thing that I learned from Star Trek, I think, was that the really good science fiction is about now. It's about the times that you're living in, and it's a way to kind of talk about things that that are happening now in a kind of a slightly abstracted way. That and where you can explore those ideas in a fictional setting.
that's when you say that fascination with space travel. I'm not sure if you realize, or I'm sure you probably know this. My father was, we're just podcasting from Dayton, Ohio, the birthplace of aviation. I would say the home of aviation. The birthplace is in North Carolina, on the beach. But what I would say to you is a couple things. Is number one, the space and science is like, no matter what the time is, if we call science fiction or science, right? It's all about optimism. It's all about, we don't know exactly what that potential is, but like you mentioned, right? We're addressing present issues in that moment. We get back to, right, entertainment, right? Engaged in the moment, and having these exchanges in these moments of observation or direct participation in our lives, or viewing it on the screen, and reading through the lines from the book. And I have to do a shout. I have to do basically a what do you call it? A blatant ad for my song, because on my track 6, I have a song that I wrote, and it's kind of dedicated to Star Wars kind of mythology, and that often, right? It's called Moonshots, just Destiny Dreams. And when we think of space, right? We think of darkness. We think of what is there, what if, and when do I go? you know, and that's, I mean, outside of our world. And I mean, that premise that you mentioned before about your book about these intelligent alien beings just observing and not saying anything. I mean, just imagine going just to a general room with somebody and they just don't say anything. They just listen.
Yeah.
And that's that would be like weirding you out big time. Like say something or act something, you know, that's crazy.
Yeah. And so like, and I think I didn't realize it until I was writing it it's a metaphor. I mean, it's obviously it's a metaphor, right? And the metaphor is, it's about what the aliens represent is this like unprecedented change. And as I was writing, I was having this feeling of cognitive dissonance where, um, we had just had the election, the 2024 election, and we knew who was coming back into office, and then he was back in office, and things started going off the rails, as far as I'm concerned, fairly quickly. And I think that there were some things that were happening that I don't know, not to get too political, but I didn't think should be happening, and I felt it very destabilizing, and I was grateful to be able to lose myself in my writing and to not think about that for a while. But I also realized that that's what I was writing about, was that this idea like that you still have to live your life even though all this stuff is happening. You have to pay your rent. You got to make dinner. You got to make time for your friends. You got to do all of these things. Is that you can't only, I mean, look, thank God we're not at war, right? But I mean, we are, I guess, in Iran, but not at home, right? Like we're not in a situation like in the Ukraine, right? And so, but there's this tension, and while all this stuff is happening that you might find really upsetting, you still have to live your life. And so, and it was one of the editors kind of, because we had been talking about that, and he said, "Well, isn't that what you're writing about? Isn't that what your characters are doing? And that with the choices that they're making, is that they're in the face of this big change, that they're choosing something for themselves as a way of exercising control." And I said, I kind of sat up and I was like, "Yeah, I guess that is what I'm writing about."
I'm getting a feeling.
You don't know.
I'm getting a feeling and a vibe for what you just said, that over a period of time, and when you mentioned that these intelligent beings, and I think it started on an individual consciousness, but I think there's a collective consciousness going on as a whole in the nation on a number of levels. And when we talk about technology and how we're operating in general, aside from technology and AI coming at us like this, and it's almost like this silence in the room is like all of our consciousness, we're all kind of slowly gathering, going, yeah, there's something not right here. I don't know what to say and how to verbalize it. And then, of course, right, we come in and we try to make these little efforts to, man, just kind of be able to walk into the room like you mentioned, and to be able to just be like, okay, I have to get back to what I do. And this is what I believe is true for me in my world and all the responsibilities, but that creative process. And I think that, without music, without storytelling, and without the poets and art and visuals and masterful creative chefs, right? I mean, what does people look forward to besides the grind? They look for like a collective ritual of breaking bread and looking at or hearing something beautiful. But, you've helped create content for children through the Sisters Grimm. I mean, what responsibilities do you think storytellers have in shaping that imagination? Especially the emotional development of these young kids, the young audiences.
Yeah. Well, So yeah, that was a great project, and I was really lucky to be involved with that one as a producer. And that's based on a middle grade book series by an author named Michael Buckley. And they're really fun, funny books. And but with a little kind of serious thing at its core, which is that the sisters have been separated from their parents, and they've bounced around a foster care system and until they discover that they have a grandmother that they didn't know was alive, and they go and live with her, and then they get indoctrinated into the indoctrinated isn't the right word. They get inducted into this world where fairy tales, it turns out, are real, and so and they have to kind of make that adjustment, and then they become fairy tale detectives. They help solve fairy tale related mysteries, and um, and the great thing about working on something like that is that it inspires imagination, and that's the best thing about stories, especially I think for kids, is that you want to inspire them to have big imaginations, and to show them that have characters that they can aspire to, like I can, like, these characters, these kids, there's this 11-year-old and her 6-year-old sister that they can solve a mystery. Well, I can apply my brain and I can do that, and I can make up stories of my own. Maybe this is something that it's cool for me. And one of the central themes of the TV show is that the girls are learning that they are writing their own story. They are in charge of their own destinies. And
Hmm.
this idea that you can write your own story is like, for a kid, I think that's incredibly liberating to hear. And I, and then going back to being an 8-year-old myself, it was, hey, write your own story. It was liberating, and it led to a career that I'm lucky to have, and that I've been able to sustain, one way or another for, a lot
I
of
think,
decades now.
yeah, I think that brings back the whole thing, right? Like, when you hear the statement, if you show me a child 3 to 5, you'll show me the adult. And, that foundational stuff, those ages there. But when you talk about I can remember specifically going in from 6, 7, and 8 and 9, how profound those years were in terms of, just kind of like almost realizing and seeing and understanding a little bit more, comprehending more, a little bit more reality around you. But and then having that vehicle that my father was, bless my father, he worked on both historic aviation and the space program. He trained astronauts in 1965. Wow. And so he was heavily involved in the space program here in Dayton. But he ultimately, I have to tell you this, it's a kind of little personal story, Elliot, that, I had been painting. I was a graphic artist and I went to advertising, but I left because I just got tired of using my creative energy to sell things I didn't believe in. Really poor food and alcohol and cigarettes and all this, whatever, prescription drugs. And I'm like, wait, there's got to be something more deeper inside me that is real and raw and worthwhile to share and nurture. And, it just makes me think about the fact that my father was able to, like, he went to work every day, paid the bills, raised the 4 of us, and he put aside of who he truly was. And he was very creative, and he was a writer. And so he gave us these tools early on. And he told me I'd write stories. And it's a funny story. You'll appreciate this. My father, God bless him. I remember Tim telling me, Greg, I want you to write a story and you can draw it in these little boxes here, and you can make a lot of money and be your own boss. So I was like, oh, that's a cartoon type thing. And I discovered a letter that he sent to a publishing company way back in probably this late 60s, early 70s. And they were like, thank you, but no thank you. And I also found poems that he wrote. So I took those poems and I actually created paintings, interpretation paintings for every single poem. And he would be beside himself, Elliot, right now, if he knew I was talking to a guy that's been involved with so much storytelling and so much creativity, and as a writer. I can't, it's almost like I have to pinch myself sometimes, like, wow, somehow I saw through the clouds. He was able to wave his hands and make it clear enough to remind me of where my sunshine lies, where the truth of that, that creative expression, he saw that in me. So, again, that's just a side comment, but listen, you've collaborated with some extraordinary creative teams. I'm all with you. Christopher Nolan, that guy's got it. His early films are amazing. And I love watching that progress of those guys. But and everybody that starts and just starts to mature and become so respected, like you mentioned Barry Levinson in that Diner movie. Oh my God, that's such a classic, man.
Yeah, yeah.
So classic. But what qualities consistently make creative partnerships successful?
I think the biggest one is listening. It's and then I think also then being open. There's so it's two things. One is listening to the people around you, and the other one is and these are related is being open to learning, and being open to other ideas. It's excuse me. It's there's this. Part of being, I think part of my ability to keep creating and learning new things. Excuse me, boy, I'm losing my voice here. May want to cut that out. For me, it has been being open to learn about new things, and because you never know. It goes back to this thing I said earlier. You never know where good ideas are going to come from. You never know what's going to be interesting to you, and where you're going to find a new source of inspiration. And so you want to listen to your collaborators, because I think that helps make you successful. And then you want to learn from them. And that was the thing that I think that I really took advantage of with some of these projects, like certainly with the Sisters Grimm and with Moriarty, which is an Audible audio drama, and my getting to work with the people, those with the writer, our head writer on the Sisters Grimm, was hugely instructive for me, because I read all of the scripts and I would make notes, but I really paid close attention to how she spoke about story and how she related her ideas and her notes to the writers that she had working under her, and paid really close attention to that stuff, because I wanted to understand. I wanted to be a better writer myself, and I had mostly had my writing had been kind of put to the side while I was helping push forward these other projects that I was not writing. And but I knew that there was always going to be something to learn from these writers, from how they went about from their process, how they went about their going from
details, all those details,
details, but going from an idea to full execution. And so just kind of being around these brilliant writers, and being open to learning from them, and just kind of putting myself in and this is not hard to do. It was but putting myself in the being open to receive that, and not thinking that that I knew it all, and because I don't, that's that maybe is the biggest thing, is just being accepting of the idea that you don't know it all, and that there are other things that you can learn from the people around you, and that's my secret, I think, right there. Happy to share that.
Right, the old thing of lifelong student, and the one thing I know for sure is I know nothing at all. Mm-hmm. And also, I love the line of, don't be the smartest guy in the room or person in the room, in terms of constantly being engaged. Again, when I'm engaged at any kind of content, I'm entertained. I'm present. And I think we go back again to this conversation. We're having this electronic conversation across the country through this medium. And, it's just as engaging. I like to think it's just as engaging as being a person, but it's not. It's not that same kind of emotional vibe sense of resonating almost in your soul. But we're definitely right, and this is what I love about the podcast. And every podcast, obviously, they benefit from, right? We get these opportunities to hear our voices heard. We talk about, right, the powers that be. I just wrote a song this morning about the powers that be, in that, did not, it's like, it's easy to distract. It's easy to deflect, and it's easy to talk about fearful things or things that you don't quite understand, or be vague about things. And it's another thing to, like, you know your realm at this point in your career, right? I know my realm in my fitness career back like the back of my hand. I mean, I wake up every day just feeling blessed, right? That, like you had mentioned before, right? You're fortunate when you can stay on point and just remember who you are. And sometimes, what do you call it? Turning things off, simplifying, as you mentioned, like simplifying your day. We break it down to things that we have to take care of, but then also, we have to just bring back, like, there's these top 5 things to make ourselves, make sure we're aware that we're staying present and healthy and engaged on a optimal level. And I think that's what a lot of people are suffering, because we're just overstimulated. Listen, when you go to a gas station and you can't even start a pump without a commercial starting, this is sick. This is sick.
Yeah.
But as a creative consultant, like Elliot, what do you think common mistakes you see, like these young talented creators might make, that prevents them from, like, reaching their full potential? Because there's a lot of talented people we know, and sometimes they get in their own way, or they're their worst enemies. What do you think?
Yeah, and I just think it always comes back down to thinking that you've got it all figured out, and I think that really is it. I mean, it's because, look, I think you get to a point when you've been doing something for a while, where you have a system that works for you, and like, the basics, and they're become ingrained, and then you can use those. You don't have to think so hard about story structure, or something like that, and because you've done it for so long, that that you can just kind of then go and just write. And but I think, certainly, but you still have to be open. And I think that's really so we're, regardless of your age, I think that's maybe the biggest mistake that people make, is just thinking that they know that they've got it all figured out, and that they don't need other feedback or other people to help. And so like the younger creators that I know are the ones that have succeeded, are the ones that are just still open, to learning, and to trying new things, and to doing things in different ways, and to kind of pushing the boundaries of the kinds of stories that they want to tell, and how they want to tell them. And so,
Yeah.
I have, like, I actually, when I was doing some creative consulting, I was doing some consulting for a kids preschool company, and which is not really my bag, but they were looking to they were trying to take some YouTube properties and develop them for TV, and I did know how to do that kind of stuff. And we got some interns along the way, and they were all great. And I've remained in contact with all 3 of them, and one in particular. She went on to she was a writer, and when we worked together pretty closely because of a couple of projects that we were assigned to, and we just vibed creatively, and she pitched me this show that she had, she had an agent and everything, and she's like, "Hey, this is the show that I'm going to take out. Can I pitch this to you?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." And so she did, and it was incredible. It was one of the best pitches I'd ever heard in my life. And
Wow.
I told her right after, I was like, 2 things. I was like, one, uh, I wish that I wish I was part of this. And two, was that you're going to sell this show. And that was the more important one, was the selling of the show. And she did. And it became this Netflix show, called, Gentry Chow versus the Underworld. And it's created by this young woman named Echo Wu. And
Nice.
Echo is brilliant. Just this brilliant creative mind. And the thing that I think makes her so brilliant is her desire to keep pushing herself and to, beyond the thing that she's done. And, whatever the last thing was that she's done, is then she always wants to do it better. And so
Nice.
I know that she's going to, because of that attitude and that, um, because of that creative desire to always keep pushing,
Yeah.
is that she'll have a long and fruitful career.
That's
And
amazing.
I think that's a great thing. And I don't think I had much to, I don't think I had much to do with helping encourage her to do that. It's like, I think that was something that was already inside of her. But the nice thing is that I still get to have lunch with her occasionally and kind of bask in her reflected glory. So,
Well,
I'm very happy and proud. I'm very happy for her, very proud of her.
well, listen to this. I mean, you obviously, I am sure that you resonate in her mind and her heart as much as she resonates in yours, obviously, right now, because it sounds like, it's almost like when you heard it, you're like, I mean, come on. I mean, it's like, you remember your first pitch. I'm sure you do, right? I remember my first clients. I remember my first attempts, and you're humbled and also inspired, right? And it's wonderful. It's wonderful to see such a purposeful, focused, serious minded, and open person. And I mean, this is what creativity is all about, right? All everyone is looking for is that next supportive step along the way, and to help kind of in those moments, guide opportunity. The best definition of luck I've ever heard was preparation with opportunity. So if you don't know what you want, and you can't nurture and be in the process of nurturing that, framing it up and having all the pieces together, when that opportunities come, it's like,
Well, that was exactly it with this book. I was not expecting, like, I've said a few times, like, writing a book was not on my bingo card. It was just not something that I had been thinking about. But when that opportunity came along, I was like, oh, wait a second. I think maybe I could do this. And so I was like, well, let's give it a shot. And fortunately I had the time too, which was the big thing. I had it wasn't just the opportunity to do it. It was it was the right window in my schedule where I could
there you go.
really kind of fit it in and dedicate the time to figuring out how to do it. Because I had to sort of reteach myself, or not even reteach, just teach myself how to write prose. Like, as I said, it had been years since I had done it, and when you're writing scripts, everything is in present tense, and most prose fiction that you read is written in past tense, and just changing tenses, like, that was something that I really struggled with, and then it finally clicked. But the first version of this story I wrote was entirely in present tense, because it just made sense to me to write it that way. And then when I started working with the editors, um, they encouraged me to just, hey, go past tense, give it a shot. You'll discover that you like it. It took some practice, but I was able to do it. But yeah, it's just that, but it was one of those things where, like, you do want to be prepared for that opportunity, and you want to,
Yeah.
and again, be open to it.
So
So
Elliot, I would be remiss. Again, the name of your book, is your book out now?
it's called Into the Great.
Okay. And you have
and,
to make sure
and
you
it's
send all
from
me all the links. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's called Into the Great. It comes out September 1st. It's from a publisher called Lil Factory. That you can pre-order it right now at lilfac.com, LILFAC .com, and they'll they're taking pre-orders. So as
Wonderful.
soon as September 1 rolls around, it'll ship out. They're based in Europe, but the international shipping is only €5, which is it almost certainly is losing money on shipping. So,
Right.
given what it costs to ship internationally these days,
Yeah.
and the books are beautiful. They're in a limited edition. He only prints 500 of them, and they have these. Actually, I don't. I've got these. This is an example. This is not my book. This is one of the other books in the line. But they're these beautiful, like fabric covered
Beautiful.
hardbacks, and they're printed on this really beautiful paper, and so they're not, so they're great books, and they're nice. They're great to have on your shelf. So there's three other books in the line, and you can buy a bundle at a really good price. And
Okay.
so yeah, so they're all really different and fun.
Yeah. So Into the Great. So let me ask you, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about what your thoughts were on, the role of artificial intelligence. It's obviously rapidly changing the entertainment industry. I mean, the mechanics, you can call it tools, you can call it, how do you envision AI becoming, a tool that, enhances human creativity rather than just replacing it?
I
I
think
mean, what
that's
do you
the
think?
biggest. I think that's the biggest challenge. I mean, I don't use it. Like I don't use it for anything. I like I don't know. I've developed my own kind of I've developed my skill set, and I just feel like I get more from talking to other people and kind of that human interaction.
Yeah.
And for me, so AI within my business is already replacing jobs, and there's challenges with it. Like it's very hard. You can't really use it for animation because it's not really directable the way that it works. You it doesn't really fit in with the workflows that we're used to, and that help us create the things that we want to create within the animation business. And so, but the thing that I kind of caution against is that these things, if they're the way that they're being used right now, they replace people. And it goes back to that whole idea that I talked about earlier, which was about this collaboration. It's like when you're working with a crew and you don't know where a great idea is going to come from. And so every person you remove from that process, you're removing a potential for a great idea. And the more it becomes just you and a machine. Yeah, like you're not really getting any feedback. It becomes you become the auteur, and I don't know I I don't really believe in the auteur theory. I think that, like, because even with you when you're writing a novel, it's like, yeah, okay, it's you and whatever, a pen and paper, or word processor or whatever, but there's still other people involved in the process. It's like if you're working with an editorial team, and so
Right.
you're still getting feedback. You're still getting human feedback, and who can identify things that you didn't see. Like, I didn't realize consciously what I was writing about until someone identified what I was writing about subconsciously. And so these things they're really important. And
Yeah.
so I think my approach with AI is like, I haven't used it. Not really interested in it. I am interested in it as a potential tool, as an assistant maybe for artists. And I know that there are people within the animation business that are kind of trying to figure out how to do that, how to so that it doesn't replace jobs, but that it
Right.
allows you to be more efficient in your job. And maybe we'll get there. I don't know, but I find that, like, the problem that I see right now, the problem that I see right now with AI is that it is replacing a lot of entry level jobs for kids that are, just trying to join any industry, not just the entertainment industry, but like it's replacing like entry level like law positions and that kind of stuff. And so these people who have gone to school to do a thing are suddenly discovering that they don't have a way to get into the business that they want to get into. And all of these knowledge based jobs are kind of getting hoovered up by these AI companies, and I kind of feel like that's the point of these AI companies, is that to take all the wealth created by these livelihoods and to suck it up into these AI companies and just redirect it to them. And I don't think that's good for society.
Yeah.
People need things. People need things to do, and they need to be able to pursue their dreams.
Right. And I have just a couple thoughts, because again, as an artist, obviously, my original thoughts are precious, and I just have to make a comment about what they're discovering now, because we're early in the game, Elliot, and they have been doing some research ever since maybe like 2 or 3 years from that, since it came out. And they're showing some of the newest research is showing that some of these companies, as you mentioned, right, are taking out these level entry jobs, right? And these people are not coming in to like kind of go through the ropes and learn these basic medial tasks, right? And what's happening is they've found that the bottom line of these companies are actually suffering when they have integrated so much AI into these medial tasks. And then what it does is that your employees that do stay on point, they have to go and instead of saying, they give an example. I found this fascinating. They give an example of like a customer service call where somebody calls up like, oh, I just need you to help me with my password, or, blah, 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 blah. There's something simple. And I'll walk you through that, right? And they've taken away all these very simple remedial type stuff that's very common and like less, right? Okay, an AI person can run you through it. And what they're finding is that the level of stress on the types of calls that go through to the people who are there actually answering the really difficult scenarios and situations, they don't have any time for, just let me show you how to do this really simple. So they're under a high amount of stress and duress. They've showed that their bottom lines have actually suffered and gone down, not up. Initially it would go up, and they just running in there. So that's some latest research I've just discovered. And I understand what you're saying about the jobs, right? Taking jobs away. And I wholly agree. But I'm going to give you an example of like my experience and how I perceive it from my individual perspective in AI, is that I've been a long time writer, but for some reason, my creative flow in my words and like my paintings, they're free form and just colorful and very engaging. But I've never been able to I could never draw a scaled depiction of like the Empire State Building to scale. I just don't have the mathematical skills, and it doesn't compute with me. So for some reason, my ears hear notes, hear magic through the music. And I'm like an organic player. I learned I play the drums. I learned how to read sheet music, but I really can't read sheet music and play at the same time. So I'm this organic field-based player. So my point in terms of like jobs is like, I believe that my road as an artist, I'm uncovering the tool of AI to allow me to take my poetry, turn them into songs, which I love music. I sing, I play drums. I taught myself basically how to play drums. I taught myself how to sing, and I enjoy it. Something that's very meaningful for me. And then what's happened with these AI tools, it's allowed me to all of a sudden use my voice, project it into there. It can spit out and make clear what I'm envisioning. And I'm excited to go, okay, there's a demo of my lyrics in this song that I think that can come out of there. Now I want to go find musicians that are fantastic on their instruments, but maybe they're not songwriters. Do you know what the most difficult thing I've found, Elliot? I'm trying to justify myself, but prove a point about AI and tools. it is going off the tracks when we just rely on it way excessively, and we're thinking that it's going to be the end result, because that humanity will not be able to handle it. But what I'm saying to you is it supported my humanity to empower me to now basically be able to give opportunities to musicians that, it's very difficult to collaborate at times, especially in music. So if I'm a songwriter and I know how to write a song on a guitar, which I don't, I'm going to have a good chance. If it's good songs and you're a good guitar player, right? Guitar player. But if you're a good guitar player and you really don't know how to write a good song, or you're a really good songwriter and you can't really play an instrument, they mesh together, right? And historically, songs have been written for other musicians. So in my eyes, I'm just like empowering myself to go, hey, listen, don't beat me up, because I practiced this art of singing and drumming, and I've tried to start multiple bands over my 30-year career, my 30-year life into music actively. And it's just so difficult to have it a semblance of ideas and thoughts, like you said, right? And keep your eyes open and open. It's the timing in the universe. So I'm finding, and again, I'm sitting on a little bit of a soapbox here, because I just released this album and they're like, oh, use AI. I said, yeah, but now I'm creating opportunities to recruit major musicians who maybe are not songwriters, but they're unbelievable musicians. And I'm looking like, I want to start a band to go out, play my stuff humanistically live. And like you said, right? You have those songs that I produced are not going to sound the same live. They're going to be even more organic and more humane. They're going to be more beautiful. And I don't call that the end result. So when have you ever said like your project or one of your creative projects is your ultimate end? Like this could never be, right? Until you final cut and send it out to a world. But it's always in the process, right, of nurturing our gifts. And this is where I stand with AI. But I completely understand we are in a time and place now that we're getting overrun by this optimism and told these stories left and right. And we're going left and right. We don't know where to go. Like, what's happening? It's like the stock market. Really? Do we know? It's speculation. But, to me, I like to try to keep things real. I hear you keeping things real and humane and just really raw, that creative spirit and, the dark path, right? Stepping out and not being afraid to think that you have to go into some machine mechanism and do a job that you have no ability to collaborate, create, communicate your idea and be involved with the ultimate product or, that deliver the goods. So, this is why, and again, I apologize for my bluntness here and making this point, but I think it's a powerful message that time's going to tell. And hopefully along the way here, right, we can have these moments of exchanges and sharing. And again, it's beyond the great, into the great,
yeah,
into your book. I'm going to definitely check it out. I really appreciate your time and energy. Keep up the great work. It sounds like you are not only a successful creative spirit in the movie and industry of storytelling, but you're also a mentor. And this is what the Imagine Fitting In podcast is all about, is that we need mentors in that human connection. And I think if we hold tight long enough, we're going to be fine. I just have an optimistic spirit, and this is my nature. Because what's the other choice?
Optimists,
right?
Yeah,
what's the other choice?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
right.
Listen, Elliot, thank you so much for sharing of your story. Really appreciate it, and continued much success on the journey.
Thank you.
And hope to see your name in lights or running up the scale in the shows just as much as in the past, and even more in the future.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Enjoyed our conversation very much.
All right. Well, take care, Elliot. Appreciate you. And so till next time, guys, we'll see you. Bye-bye.
Professor. And beauty beyond control.
Feel the moment, feel the bliss. Watchful seconds, holding more than this. Through the tracks, midnight glows.